And as some of you convention veterans know, several years ago we decided to prominently feature EEI's own CEO leadership during a keynote dialogue that became an instant hit. So we offer that up again this morning to you. Moments ago I announced that Lynn Good is our new chairman, but now it's my pleasure to announce the rest of EEI's 2018-2019 leadership team, also elected during yesterday afternoon's board meeting. EEI Vice Chairman, Exelon Corporation President and CEO, Chris Crane. Chris. EEI Vice Chairman, Xcel Energy Chairman, President and CEO, Ben Fowke. And as a very special guest, and certainly no stranger in this industry, somebody who was supposed to be in our chairs and moving up to chairman, but I got a call from him in January saying that he was rejecting us, that there was another person that had a bigger mission for him, Warren Buffett, and I don't think you say no to Warren Buffett, but we're very, very proud of the fact that Greg Abel has been elevated in the Berkshire Hathaway Energy Corporation as their vice chair. So please give a warm welcome to Greg Abel. Please. And by tradition, this panel is moderated by EEI's immediate past chair. So back to the podium again, Pat Vincent-Collawn.
Before we start our panel, I want to offer my congratulations to our new chairman and my friend, Lynn Good. I know Lynn is going to do a terrific job, and I look forward to supporting her any way I can. Just let me know. I also want to thank Tom Kuhn and my fellow CEOs for the opportunity to serve as chairman. It has been a great pleasure for me to work with all of my colleagues and with Tom and his team at EEI. They do an amazing job. It was also great to work with all of you because of your dedication to serving our customers. This is an industry that always puts customers first. Our community continues to be so unique in many ways, and I really prize our amazing collegiality and our determination to work together to solve the big issues on behalf of our customers. So as Tom indicated, our leadership panel this morning is to go inside of all these fine people's offices and try to sort out some of the major opportunities and challenges in front of us. You all know our industry is continuing its profound long-term transformation, so there's a lot of stuff to unpack up here. So I'm going to get started. And just very quickly, one of the great things you get to do when you're EEI chair is you get to pick a focus area or two. And my two were smart cities and diversity and inclusion. I'm thrilled to say, with all of your support, EEI companies representing 97% of our customers have taken that Smart Cities Challenge, and we're all working with our communities on smart cities. And on the diversity and inclusion front, yesterday, EEI and all of its members made a commitment to diversity and inclusion as a business imperative to help us in these longer-term challenges. For Lynn's focus area as chairman, she has picked customers and customer solutions. And so, Lynn, talk a little bit about where you're going. At Duke, you have been an amazing leader on this. You have really, I think, raised the game at Duke in terms of looking at customers and leading the transformation both in the immediate term and the long term. So talk about your plans as EEI chair.
Sure, Pat, and thank you for that. You know, this is an industry that has long been dedicated to serving our customers. I think we were reminded of that yesterday with the tribute to Puerto Rico and the number of employees working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to deliver great service to customers. But what I would like to do is elevate the conversation over the next year to really articulate and further promote this industry as a customer-centric industry. Because as I think about the transformation that's underway, the new technologies that are being introduced, the fact that our customers are expecting more from us, the history of undifferentiated products and really running a bulk power system will really minimize our transformation if we just leave it there. But if we go beyond it and really embrace the notion of customer experience and customer value in a way that I know that we're capable of, I believe will transform in a way that delivers great value. And so meeting and exceeding expectations, more choices, more channels, more technologies. And I think about the convening power of EEI to really put a spotlight on that, the great work that we're doing, giving us an opportunity to share best practices, developing a compelling vision that we can articulate as an industry on how we are leading the way in serving and delighting our customers. I think there's real potential. And I think it's the heart, the purpose, the mission of this industry to do it. So let's just turn our attention in a way that really shines a spotlight on that. Because if we accomplish that and present ourselves as the customer-centric industry that we are, I think it'll make the transformation even more successful for this industry.
Thank you. And Ben, I'm going to start with you on this and then go down to Lynn, and then Greg, I have a separate question for you.
Okay, good.
You know, one of the customer solutions, I think, is electric transportation. And Tom mentioned we have, 800,000 vehicles on the road here. What China and State Grid is doing is absolutely amazing. Do you think the stars have finally aligned? Some of us have been doing this for a long time, right? We've lived through EV1s and we've lived through other stages of electric vehicles. Do you think the stars have aligned on electric transportation?
Thanks, Pat, and I do. When we can reduce carbon emissions and save money at the same time, that's a pretty compelling value proposition for customers. And, today if you fill up your electric vehicle in Xcel Energy's system, you're going to reduce your carbon emissions by 60 to 70%, plus save money. Where we're going by 2030, I think it'd be more like a 95% reduction, and again, saving money. So the key is seeding that infrastructure and helping customers make that transition. So I think we're in the early days of that, but we want to be the leader in that in our respective jurisdictions. We're on various gubernatorial task force to study that issue, and Pat, what we're focused on is making it more convenient, back to Lynn's point, for customers to buy an EV, get the charging in their homes set up, and then have an easy, convenient way to take advantage of a different sort of rate to charge their electric vehicle. So more to come on that, but we're excited about the possibilities.
Chris.
I agree. The range of the cars has improved greatly. The affordability is coming down. In our ability to support, as Ben said, the customer's desires. We started a phone desk and a help desk to help people understand what you can do and where you should go on getting an electric vehicle. We give rebates. We work with Nissan Leaf to employees and work with some of our other companies. But the real issue right now is coordinating in each one of the jurisdictions the build out of the infrastructure. We have in Maryland right now, in front of the regulatory body there, a combined coalition that is requesting approval to build out a system that would be second to only California. It's a $109 million initial investment. All the utilities are involved in it. It has partnerships with charging companies. So, as Nick mentioned yesterday, sometimes you don't want to try to take it all. Coalitions are the better way to do it. If you can work with the environmental groups, the consumer advocates, and the technology providers, I think we can do a much better job on electrification.
Lynn.
Pat, I think this is really a tremendous opportunity. If you look at our industry, we have aggressively decarbonized, and the people on this stage, I think Ben has been a leader, of course Chris also, Greg, and our industry now is not the leading emitter of carbon, it's transportation. And so we have an opportunity to take a real leadership position to continue to drive decarbonization by assisting and supporting and investing in charging infrastructure that will allow that progress to continue. We're beginning to see greater interest in our communities, among our customers. We're taking a leadership role with our own fleet, and we actually see interest in other fleets, large transportation, buses, municipalities really embracing this. So I see this as a natural extension of our leadership, and I think we can make a real difference.
And Greg, first of all, welcome back. Let me add thanks to Tom's for coming to see us today. And I know it's only been a few months since you've been gone, but sometimes when you're gone and then you look back, it's easier to see changes. So have you seen changes on the power industry landscape, one? And then secondly, now that you're in a different position, does kind of looking from afar at the industry give you any different insights or thoughts?
Thanks, Pat, and it's great to be back. So truly still nice to be part of the industry because obviously we have Berkshire Hathaway Energy, but do miss the interaction every day, and it's just a pleasure to be here with everyone.
Well,
so
thank you for leaving us Bill Furman. He's a great leader.
There you go. Yeah, you're in far better hands, trust me. It is interesting because as transitioned into the new role, obviously look back at the energy and you try to take those experiences and build upon them. And equally, as we see new experiences, you're looking at the industry saying, well, what can we take back to it? And it's interesting. When I look at what the priorities, we've already two of the probably three big ones we've discussed on the stage, the focus on the customer. I don't think we can ever lose sight of that. And as I look at other industries, that sort of only emphasizes it more. How do we, be it thrill or engage our customers, but it's that, do we have a value proposition for them that's going to allow us to be competitive long term? And I could be gone the 5 months I've been sort of moved on, or I think a year from now, 2 years from now, I'm going to look back, and as Lynn's leading the organization, I can't think of a better charge that we have to stay focused on that. The decarbonization, which was just discussed, both in the industry, but now extending to the transportation sector. I would put that as what we focused on at BHE is, again, of the top three, that was right there with the top three. So it's ironically the two of the three discussed, and the third one would be cyber. And I just would add, from seeing other industries and the challenges they're having around data, that continuing to be a priority for our industry. The energy industry has to be, again, up there with those other two. So I don't think they've changed, but it reemphasizes the importance of those three.
You mentioned decarbonization, and Lynn, you talked about the fact that now transportation is the #1 source of carbon. And Chris, I'll start with you on this, and then we'll get Ben and Lynn in. Our generation portfolio is changing. Natural gas surpassed coal in terms of a generation fuel. But then you look, there's this very large keep it in the ground movement that is against natural gas, and there's this move to 100% renewables. So talk about how you're thinking about your generation portfolio and how we educate the public on what's a very complex subject, that that we need all of the above, and that we're not quite where we need to be yet on 100% renewables.
So the technology is changing faster in our sector than we've ever seen it before. The advancement of storage, the efficiency of renewables, but the reality is it's dark at night and the wind doesn't blow, and having a 1 hour or 4 hour capacity for storage will not allow us to maintain the reliability we need across the system. Each jurisdiction has a little bit different penetration on sun. If you're dealing with Arizona to Illinois, it's quite a bit different. So our customers want clean, reliable, but affordable energy. And the way for us to do that is to continue the advancement and research into technologies that can do that, but with keeping the balance of the reliable and affordable as we go forward. We've already said we've reduced more than any other sector. As far as our environmental impact, we can continue to do that as we go along, but we have to look at the resiliency. I got some headlines yesterday from a quick interview, and I want to clarify some of those statements. I've been up here the last couple of years talking about market design issues and the market not recognizing and compensating the units for the reliability or the environmental benefits they have. This is not a war on gas or any other fuel source or war on renewables. It's the physics of the system and how it works. We are getting a greater dependency on gas, and that's great for the economy. It's great for manufacturing, but at the end of the day, we're going to be held accountable to keep the lights on and keep it affordable. So we've had the conversation, but we have an administration that we greatly appreciate now that recognizes this is an underanalyzed situation, And if we don't focus on resiliency and national security, we could end up in a very dire situation. So for us, we just have the nuclear assets that are primarily in our fleet besides the gas and the renewable assets and the hydroelectric. One thing I know is when we shut a nuclear plant down, it's never coming back. Today, the way the markets are designed, New England, PJM, they do not take fuel diversity and resiliency to the capacity market design to the level that needs to be to maintain the resiliency of the system. So we've seen a lot of headlines, we've seen a lot of news. The Secretary, Fowke, has got a resiliency docket. The chairman is expediting that. We need to get the insight on what the design basis needs to be and expedite the resiliency review before we lose these units and they can never come back. So, my comments yesterday and my comments today is because of the way that the markets are designed, how do you define an emergency? Well, you're starting to see that in New England. When we've seen the filings in New England where they're saying we have to put fuel into the mix on resiliency and the design for reliability. But then you go on to the national security and the dependency of two systems that have never been designed or coordinated together. The electric day, the electric transmission system, the redundancy requirements to maintain that, and the gas day, the gas transmission, how many electric plants are off of that, what's the vulnerability if one or two gas lines go down from a natural disaster or a terrorist type approach, how are we physically protected? That analysis has to be done, and that's the analysis that the government has taken on. We saw the leaked document at the beginning of the week. It gives some framework, but it doesn't give us enough to know to say that is the right design. We're at a situation today that if we continue to allow the nuclear plants to shut down, there's 4 sites that have announced early retirement in PJM, significant amount of megawatts that will come off. If you care about carbon at all, if you care about the environment at all, the carbon reduction that those units have created and maintained are far more than any investment that's been made in PJM renewables or RECs that have been procured. We're all for RECs, we're all for renewables, but you can't go backwards. We have to have a design that goes forward.
Thanks. It's very complicated. Ben, your take.
Well, I agree with, I think, much, if not all, of what Chris was talking about. We are making an enormous transition, and renewables will play a big role in that. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing with renewables, but to me, it's not just renewables. The end game is carbon reduction in the most affordable, pragmatic way possible. And, I will tell you, it's not a matter of, if we're going to retire our coal fleet in this nation. It's just a matter of when. But right now, to Chris's point, the big grid still needs, grid quality things like system inertia and spinning mass. And as we all know, nuclear is 100% carbon free. So I can't tell you where technology is going to be in 15 years. I've never bet against technology. Back in 2010, I was happy to tell you about wind that we were buying at $65 a megawatt hour. Now it's below 20. Solar's had a similar path. So things can change, and we're obviously looking at batteries, but don't kid yourself. Right now, that technology does not give us what we need to produce for our customers what they all want, which is safe, reliable energy and affordable energy. So one of the things I am excited about, back to your initial question, is our Steel for Fuel program, where we are from Minnesota all the way down to Texas, really blessed with some of the best wind resources in the country, and we're taking advantage of that for our customers' benefit. We can literally, even in today's low natural gas environment, we can literally build wind at a price and earn a reasonable return on it, and that return will still save customers money. So in other words, consider wind energy a deeply in the money hedge for our customers. So we save them money, we get greener, we reduce our carbon emissions. In fact, by 2022, we'll have 50% of our energy coming from renewable sources, And that'll have our carbon reduction by 50% as well. And again, I think it's about the carbon reduction. We have plans in Colorado that we're announcing, I believe, today, that'll have us at a 60% carbon reduction and 55% of our energy by 2026. Again, at no incremental cost, looking at traditional resources. The upper Midwest, we think we can have even more sensational carbon reduction goals. In fact, we like to talk about carbon-free energy by 2030 at 85%. But guess what? To Chris's point, that includes our nuclear fleet. That goes away, then it's a whole different argument. And, you know, I just think that's really important because today, you know, as you drink your cup of coffee, I wouldn't be surprised if it says, you know, 100% brewed with renewable energy. And that's fine. And we're working with cities and communities through our Renewable Connect program and other programs to give them help meet their sustainability goals. But what I'm worried about, and what we're working together now at EEI is to start to educate folks, is that 100% renewable is starting to sound like, well, of course, everybody should be 100% renewable, but it's not that easy when you look at the big grid. And I think that's a dialogue we have to have with our key stakeholders, and messaging that is also important because this industry is leading the clean energy transition. But we never are going to sacrifice reliability and affordability. And a lot of times infrastructure trails transformation. So we have to be careful with that.
Lynn.
Pat, I think it's such an important conversation. And this industry has led the way in decarbonizing. And we've done so by using the tools that are economically available. Natural gas has been an important one for Duke Energy. We have closed older coal plants, and we've introduced natural gas and renewables, and we've achieved 30% carbon reduction as a result of that. We'll be at 40% carbon reduction by 2030. We continue to operate a very diverse fleet, and nuclear for us is important. In the Carolinas, 50% of the energy comes from carbon-free nuclear. So we think the conversation about carbon-free is an important one because nuclear needs to be part of that equation. But I think the sense of urgency that we often feel to solve this big complex issue has us moving to quick headlines, 100% renewable. Shouldn't we just connect batteries and solar and solve all of this? And it's a really complicated issue. And I think the point's been made a number of times. We don't have all the tools today that we will have in 2035. So why would we move too aggressively in a direction with an incomplete set of tools when we have an opportunity to continue to make very meaningful progress with economic tools we have today? Because I think reliability and affordability is important. And I think this industry has demonstrated that we will keep moving. We'll keep moving with battery technology. We'll keep moving with distributed energy resources. We'll keep moving with investment in our grid in order to make it more efficient, reliable, and institute and create capacity for more renewables. But let's be thoughtful about it, so that we maintain this incredibly rich asset of a grid and an electric system that's 99+% reliable in this country and affordable for our citizens. And I think if we can have the conversation about pace and have the conversation about the progress we're making, we'll get to the right answers. Greg?
You guys have made some headlines on renewable energy. You want to talk a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
So maybe we've tried to simplify it too much relative to this conversation.
Let's talk about that, Greg.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I knew this was coming from an earlier conversation backstage. I was getting beat up a little bit, but well deserved. Using Iowa as an example, we took the approach that said, okay, what do our customers consume over a 12-month period? And it's that simple, and we've said, okay, we want to produce that amount of renewable energy equal to what they're consuming on an annual basis. That doesn't mean it's perfect minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, but what we did say is we're going to match those, and we're not going to sell the RECs. We're not going to go buy RECs, but we're also not going to sell them, and we'll turn over effectively the value of that REC back to the customer through a program we have, but they can't sell it. So they can use it to go comply with their programs, whatever their corporate social responsibility programs are. But we started with that simple concept that we want to get to 100% of our energy needs, or what our customers are consuming, matched with renewable energy production. If you looked at it where they are right now in Iowa, we'd be a little over 50%. We're continuing to build out a substantial program that by 2020, that will be 100%. So it'll be perfectly matched at that point in time. Again, building on Chris's comment, that can't be done without the right system in place, because we're very dependent upon our other states being a shock absorber at times, and us being a shock absorber at times relative to that energy we're producing. Is Chris, I'm not sure that's a smile.
I like
or,
it be called a
Smile
flare.
it. I highlighted the yellow in the
I
article.
hope Chris is smiling here. But equally, we recognize it does impact the systems, but it's the only way you truly can get to that point. And you can achieve a lot. We've announced in Nevada we intend to have a very similar program. If you looked at our renewable energy at 17% right now, we've just announced last week we're going to double that to 34%. And I know our team has visions then to double it again. So it'll be very dependent upon the other states around us and how we can achieve these things and how the systems interplay with the other resources. But that is the dream we've maintained. And as I highlighted, maybe we simplify it, but it's a dream and we want to be able to articulate it and pursue it.
Did you want to say something, Chris?
Okay. No.
I'm just watching.
I'm still reeling from the shock absorber. At night when this is the complication of the design of the markets in the states being in different RTOs next to each other, in how we look at the integration of the resiliency, the economics, and the environment of the system we operate. So when Iowa is not using that wind, it flows east into Illinois, and it has price effects on the market in Illinois. So the way the prices are formed, the pricing signals tell the plants in the state to shut down or pay them less for their output. That drives the economics from a competitive market from a regulated market. And so getting the seams right, getting the market design right, and looking at the resiliency is really a requirement that we need federal intervention on, because this is a broad area. You take the Eastern Interconnect, you look at the different ISOs that operate, the seams that we have, and we don't have resource planning to say this is the type of power and the base load, the mid-merit, the peaking, the renewables to work into it. So that's why I think what the administration is doing now on really pushing not only price formation to make sure the units are adequately compensated, but the resiliency review from the unintended consequences of driving plants out of the stack that we need for reliability.
So we have the actual working of the grid on one side, and our regulators and our policymakers with whom we can have these more complicated discussions. And then we have our customers, who quite frankly don't care. And I read an article once I thought was fascinating that says when you go to the doctor, when you go into a surgeon, you don't understand exactly how everything's going to work and what they're going to do, but you trust that your surgeon is going to do the right thing and you're going to come out okay on the other side. How do we get customers to trust us that we are moving in the right direction, we are doing the right things? Because if we had this discussion in front of most of our customers, their eyes would glaze over. But they want to know that we're doing the right thing and that nuclear is is carbon-free and that we need gas right now. Lynn, I think with your focus on the customer, this is real helpful, but how do we frame this in a debate or a message that they get and that they trust us?
Pat, I think the trust is earned every day from reliable, affordable power, and we need to keep moving in that direction for customers. But I also think we're living in an age of engaged customers who have more of an interest in understanding where their power is coming from. They have more of an interest in managing their resources. They have more of an interest in talking to us in a way that they're comfortable talking with other companies, whether it's digital tools and other things. And I think this industry for far too long has been behind the scenes, flip the switch, we're always there. We've only engaged when you start your service and when we send you a bill, and I don't think that's enough. So I think an engagement and a discussion, communication, and languages that people understand, engaging stakeholders who care deeply about this issue, and involving them in the conversation, I think that's what is essential to go forward, because the tools and techniques that we used over decades to just get the switch to work is not going to be the tool that's going to be necessary to build that trust and confidence, to have the conversation that our customers want to have. And because we're filled with lawyers, engineers, and financial people, we're going to need some help on messaging that's clear and understandable, that's common sense, and I think that's a real opportunity for us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with what Lynn is saying. We approach things, I think, from an engineering perspective, and we'll have this debate about 100% renewable, and Greg's team might have 4 different caveats when he says something. My team might have 4 different caveats. The other guys don't have any caveats, and I think it's about continuing to connect with the customer from their perspective. I mean, we are going through every one of our customer-centric processes and re-looking at them through the eyes of a customer and making it easier for us to do business. We want to be the trusted, preferred provider of our customers' energy needs. And, preferred means that they do have choice. And that's a message that I think our employees are really starting to understand, because they do. We have to be the problem solvers. And I think it's not only with, the general population, our customers, but it's also with key stakeholders. As we make this clean energy transition, it's disruptive. And, and communities are impacted by it, employees are impacted. Well, I think our good message is we've served communities for over 100 years, and we want to serve them for another 100 years, but we are uniquely positioned to help communities make that transition. And, we have been making this transition now for almost 20 years. And we've got a track record of announcing that what's going to happen early, giving employees plenty of time to, through natural attrition, minimize disruption. And then one of the things I think we do a really good job of is working with those communities that are impacted to make sure, either through economic development or replacement generation or some other support, those communities aren't harmed. Only the utility industry would step up to that. Absolutely. And I think that's a message we have to get out there.
I had a regulator say to me once, who's looking out for all the people that are losing their jobs to Amazon, right? You guys are looking out for the people that lose their jobs. Chris?
So some of us are, transitioning, has been said, from years back where we were calling the customer the ratepayer, and some of our, utilities had gone on overambitious build-outs of nuclear facilities and really caused some rate impacts. And the reputation that we had was the driver of restructuring. And all these market rules we're talking about now are a byproduct of restructuring, and it was okay for the consumers for a certain period of time, but now we've got these oddities in the system that have to be fixed. But being able to transition from the monopoly that controlled and was calling you a ratepayer to having that customer focus that Lynn and Ben are talking about, and making sure that you have relevance with the customers you serve. On the customer side, the continuous messaging, the continuous service levels, understanding what they want, but for part of it is being involved in the communities we serve. So we have some, Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, and a lot of rural areas that have underserved communities. Being involved in the community, being part of the fix, being able to bring technologies in, be able to bring philanthropic or volunteerism, and show that we care about the communities is a key on how we build our trust with the customers. The base table stakes are the clean, reliable, affordable, and then from there. The other thing that we've had to transition into, and it's been very successful in especially Illinois and some other areas, is building coalitions. You can't get everything you want, but you can get what the customers need. If you can have the environmental groups at the table, the consumer advocates at the table, you can come up with thoughtful plans on where we're going, what we need to do to get all of the constituents' issues at the table. So I think continuing to reach out to what had been seen probably as our adversaries in the past and say we're common-minded, we're willing to work with you, has been successful.
and we've got a question from the audience on tax reform, and I'll come back to that one in a minute. But Greg, you obviously have a wide portfolio now. Which industries do you think do the best job of focusing on the customer?
Well, I think, let me start by one unique perspective from our industry, hearing all this and looking at these other industries. I think we're very fortunate as folks that work in this industry and serve these customers. We do have a purpose of serving the greater good. We start from a great place in that, as we've said, it can be flicking the switch or having our trucks roll to get the power back on, whatever. We're out there every day doing something that is highly valued by our customers. And I think we're very fortunate to be in that industry. And as I look at other industries, they don't start from that advantage, even when you're having that dialogue with the employees or with your customers. So we start from a great place that I think we can all be extremely proud of and be, again, proud of that we're part of this industry. So I think we start from a great place. And I would just even add to it, I was just thinking as I was saying that, the other thing is it builds the collaboration, as we saw the Edison Awards today. That doesn't exist in other industries. We're not trying to figure out how do we work together, how do we learn from each other, and there are examples, positive train control in the rail systems. We're trying to figure out how we can remotely operate our trains and things like that. But the reality is you don't see the collaboration that you see in this industry and the desire to work together, both to solve problems, but to get more efficient, get better, and serve the customer. So I think we start with a lot of advantages. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. So I'm very proud of where we're at as an industry. I think if you look at the various industries now that I'm fortunate to look at, I mean, if you look at the new companies that have come in and are truly the disruptors, they start with the customer every time. And every pretty much situation we look at across a variety of companies, as we're either deploying more capital, looking at how do we like to use the word, as many people know, protect our moat, how do we protect it? The conversation quickly goes to Amazon.
Right.
And how disruptive they are, but it's because they want to thrill the customer constantly. So and I would say every one of our industries is facing disruption in some sort or another, and not just the energy space. But it's back to that customer, and how do you thrill them, and do you understand the value proposition they want, and can you deliver that? And in the end, it has to be affordable. But so I wouldn't target any specific thing other than constantly going back to that being our reference point as we look at, like I said, it may be an opportunity, it might be a risk, but we're looking at, an Amazon or an Amazon equivalent. How are they going to impact us?
So the question from the audience is, how has tax reform impacted your companies in the industry? And I'll start with you, Lynn, on that one. But before I do this, I really want to thank everybody in this industry that worked so hard on tax reform. Remember when it started, there was going to be no exceptions for any industry. Our industry stuck together and talked about how the customer was going to benefit with the tax reform. And so at the end of the day, we were able to get what our customers needed out of the tax reform, and two of our, what we call them, tax championships, Lynn and Ben are here, or tax champions, excuse me, that did a lot of the heavy lifting on that. So Lynn, if you'd start on how tax reform, and then Ben and Chris and Greg, if you'd kind of like to weigh in on it overall, because it's probably impacting you very differently.
Pat, I look at tax reform as a unique opportunity that lowers the price of our service to customers. So you think about just the rate differential from 35 to 21, that's a cost of our service, and automatically it goes down. And when we have an opportunity to provide a reduction in price to customers at the same time, we're innovating with new technologies and renewables and grid investment and cyber investment and other things. To be able to do that with the headroom of lower price, I think is a real asset. We also have taxes that we've collected over time, these deferred taxes that will be refunded to our customers or reducing rates over time, and that's an opportunity for us to find what is the right pace to to provide customers with that benefit, at the same time maintaining the credit quality of the utility and also thinking about the investments that are in front of us. So I think of tax reform really as being a win-win, as a way for us to keep investing but also provide benefit to customers.
Yeah, I think Lynn said it really well. And if you think about what tax reform means, it's about, at least for us, and it's probably pretty representative of the industry, about a 4% decrease in bills for our customers. And the interesting thing, and I bet a lot of you in this room don't know this, but the industry has done a great job at keeping bills flat, or in some cases lowering total bills over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think when you look forward, there's more good news around that. Back to that messaging that we got to get out there, because that's certainly not what other people perceive and other people would tell potential customers. But tax reform, to Lynn's comment, was very complicated. I think we were fortunate that because we spoke with one voice, legislators listened to us, and you can imagine every industry was going in there saying we're unique. Yeah. But we really are, for a number of different reasons, and how these benefits flow back to customers. So the ability to preserve interest deductibility for our customers was really paramount, and we got that. So customers benefited from that. Tax reform is a good thing. It lowers bills, that's always great, but it also does have an impact on credit quality. So we're in the middle now of having dialogue with our regulators about, again, to Lynn's point, the pace that we refund. I mean, the majority of it should be immediate refund, but we also think we need to make sure that the investment grade ratings and the strong credit metrics that allow us to cost effectively make the investments that our customers need and want, that's not compromised.
So I totally agree. It's such a benefit for the customer. It uniquely positions us as a company to, within the first few weeks, announce and make the filings in all our regulatory jurisdictions that it will cut rates by over $500 million annually for our customers. And that's huge across the jurisdictions. Over the next 5 years, we'll be investing $27 billion into the utilities. That investment's needed for resiliency, reliability, and affordability as we upgrade the systems with the storm fronts coming in or the technology shifting. We'll do that while keeping rates flat to reducing in every jurisdiction. It's a significant investment. It's a significant opportunity to improve the customer experience while them not feeling the pain of the bill increasing. We have the filings in for Fowke now at all our jurisdictions. There's a potential for, depending on the approval, another $100 million reduction across the board to the customers. So we've done everything we could to advertise that, to make sure the customers know. ComEd this year, because of large investments in some capacity auction increases, was going to have an increase of about 5 to 6% in a filing. They were able, actually, because of tax reform, to have a rate reduction during that period of time. So really great for the customers. We're uniquely, one of the more unique ones, we can do that, maintain our cap structures at the utilities without any equity issuance. And so it's also good for the shareholders in the long run. We were able to take the free cash flows from one side of the business that gets the ability to use the lower tax rate and pass that free cash flow into the balance sheets and maintain that strong metrics for the advisory services, rating agencies.
So Greg, obviously different at Berkshire Hathaway, but can you give us a flavor of the issues you're facing with tax reform?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you think of the energy space and the utility space, it's really the one sector that returned the benefits back to customers immediately. So again, and it took a lot of work to get that done properly by a lot of folks in this room. So again, very well done. But the rest of the industries effectively retain it and have to, as Lynn said, in the industry, we've got this headroom in the utility space now. You can return it or find ways to redeploy that capital properly. I think that's what's going on in a lot of other industries. You've got some headroom now. You effectively were paying 35%. You're paying 21% now. Effectively, someone just gave you a larger piece of your company back to you. They took a chunk and said, instead of the government owning a piece of it, they said, this is yours. And companies have to decide what to do with that now. And the good news is a lot of them are figuring out how do you reinvest back into the businesses, taking that capital, and it may not go immediately back to customers, but it will in one form or another, either being invested back into the businesses, or the reality is, as I touched on early, competition over a period of time will take that away likely from a lot of companies and industries. So you have to prepare, or at least be aware of the competition and be ready that that's what competition does. So a lot of thoughts around how do we approach it going forward. Not so much the deferred tax changes in those balances, but the fact we've got a lower rate, incremental cash, how do you properly deploy that and utilize it?
It was nice that the government recognized that private industry is a better deployer of capital than the government. So,
exactly.
We've talked about diversity and inclusion as being a business imperative because we all have, retiring folks in our workforce. We have one of the highest average ages of workforces. So, what kind of workforce challenges are you facing today in your companies, and how do you get that talent that you need to stay competitive? Ben, I'll start with you, and we'll just come right down here, and then I'll ask you the final question.
By the way, I thought Tony Byer's presentation yesterday was great and really informative. And you're right, Pat. I've been CEO now for almost 7 years, and when I came in to that position, I looked at the workforce, and I realized that half of that workforce was going to retire in the next 10 years. So we're well into that journey, and that kind of journey. You have it's obviously a huge challenge to replace legacy knowledge, but I also think it's a tremendous opportunity to make sure that the workforce that you hire will position that workforce for success for years to come. And it's also something where if you back burner that, and there's always something that goes to the front of the list based upon the day's agenda, you can get along pretty far into that journey and realize you didn't make the difference you wanted to. So we did a lot of different things right up front. The first and foremost is we changed a lot of our hiring practices, and we went away from skills are obviously important, but it's a lot easier to teach skills than values. So we do a leadership and value assessment, really understand who we're hiring. And by the way, that's a natural fit for my passion on hiring veterans, because they do have the right stuff and the right values. But we also, what I challenged our HR group to do is get involved earlier in the upstream process. Don't hand the manager 40 applications and they pick the one. And, who are they going to pick? And so on the diversity efforts, we've done a lot of work on making sure that we take that extra step in where we spend our recruiting dollars and our job fairs to get a more diverse candidate profile, and we do the screening up front, and we present that manager not 40 applications but 4 applications, ideally one that has some diversity and some other things, and we make sure that we do more value screening. So I think it's early days, but we're seeing big improvements on that. I'm really proud of what we're doing with our vets, and I think it's important too that you relook at your comp programs, and we've done all of that. If you work for Xcel Energy and you get a bonus at the end of the year, I want to make sure you know how you got that bonus, and more importantly, what you do next year to get that bonus. And so we've carved out a lot. We've made it a lot more. What did you accomplish, not only as an individual but as a team? And we're seeing great results from that. I'm really excited about it. And the question is, how do you attract talent? Well, I think if you're leading the clean energy transition, if you have an inclusive workplace, if you have obviously market-based comp programs, people will be attracted and more importantly, they'll stay with your company.
Thanks. Chris.
So it's been a very important journey for us. Many of the same attributes, aging workforce, making sure that we're ahead of the curve, not only on the generation side, but on the wires side and the gas pipeline side. But if you start to look at the communities we serve, you really understand you have to, for customer engagement and recognition of relevance, you have to reflect more of the diversity of the communities you serve. We've done, have a lot of good programs that have supported the improvement in the diverse talent that we're bringing into the company. Real focus on what does inclusion mean and what are the behaviors around inclusion. As Tony said yesterday, you know, it's not just about the counts of how many within ethnicity or gender. It is once you have people that reflect the community you serve, how do they feel like they're included in driving that mission, having the passion, doing a lot of the same things Ben talked about. We have this screening for entry-level hires all the way up to the top on the behavioral dimensions. Where are you on the continuum of a narcissist to a pleaser? You know, how will you be committed to the customer and get, you know, having those measurements. So you've got the right culture, the right team coming together with a diverse background and diversity of thought. Some of the programs that have helped us to be more successful on retention is in hiring and retention is going in and partnering with the inner city schools and the community city colleges to have programs that ready them for our industry. We hire some, make sure our contractors hire some of the technicians out of those programs, but giving an opportunity to the underserved. We found a problem a few years back where we had a low pass rate on African American males on the CAS test, our EEI standard CAS test. Well, then you go back and find out why. The public high schools in Chicago and Philadelphia and Baltimore are doing a terrible job on basic theory, leverage. You know, the tests are not hard, but if the schools aren't giving them the aptitude around it, and if their summer jobs are not in a factory where they learn how wrenches work, so that's been really good to get pipeline training programs, working with the communities, and be able to take our technicians in. And now we're proceeding more on internships on these training programs. On the engineering and the office side, the financial engineering, and we have intern programs where we start many of our interns as rising sophomores, and we'll give them valid projects that they'll engage, and they'll learn us, we'll learn them. We understand where their degrees are going, the backgrounds that they have. We get to watch them, and we have a 70% hire rate from our intern program. So it's been very good with over 50% diversity in those numbers. So it's something you have to focus on. It's something that you can get the numbers, you can get the hiring pipelines because we pay well, we get great benefits, but it's the inclusion that we're still working on, the culture, on how do we create that environment. The millennials, they expect to be able to go out and volunteer. They expect to be able to have time, company time, to engage in the communities, and getting your line managers that have been with the company for 40 years to say, no, you got a desk job to do. You know, there's got to be a shift that we make.
To be a VP in 2 years.
Yeah, they do. Well, I had a group of high school kids in, there's a STEM class we sponsor in the summer, one of the Chicago high schools, and the girl asked me, said, so how do I get your job? She's in high school.
You said you can have it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have it.
Lynn.
You know, I think there's so many dimensions of this, and what Ben and Chris have talked about, you know, we have a number of those programs going on as well. Maybe to take it a slightly different direction, you know, at Duke we talk a lot about transformation. We talk a lot about embracing change. We talk a lot about the fact that we need to be moving forward on our front foot to meet the challenges of this industry and move forward. And I think for millennials in particular who want to be involved with something that matters and who have grown up in a world where everything is digital and easy, it creates a compelling case for them to join us. And so we're taking the time to invest in innovation centers, agile workspace, to bring in the workforce of the future that'll be interested in pursuing change aggressively. And I would also supplement that with some of the comments that Chris made around workforce development is another dimension of this. And in a U.S. economy where there's unemployment at 3.7%, we absolutely must find employees that are non-traditional, that didn't come to us in the way they did 10 years ago. So we're very active in our communities on workforce development issues to get the word out about our industry, to do things like you know, supporting tests and education programs in a way to find a different pipeline, because I think that different pipeline is going to be important for our success and the success of the communities that we serve.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
The only thing I'd maybe add is that the second part of the question is, do we have the talent to stay competitive? So when I hear what Ben, Chris, Lynn shared and all the programs and truly the focus on it, I would say yes, because we're well aware of it and we're doing the things we need to be doing to stay competitive. So that's great. I think in some ways, the challenge going forward will be artificial intelligence and what it means to our workforce, because it will change our needs drastically in not just the numbers, but the type of skills we need from our workforce. And it goes beyond the intelligence, but what does that intelligence lead as far as what tasks can be completed? And it can go a long ways, and I think it'll have some interesting impacts, not just on the energy sector, but a lot. So I think as we transform from everything we're doing now, we have to at some point put that on the agenda and understand what it's going to mean.
So the last question is always the same at this panel every year, and Greg, I'll start with you and go down here, is, you know, to be a CEO, you have to be an optimist. But there are still things
I'm leaving then.
Yeah, okay.
An optimist
I've known you long enough, Ben, you're an optimist.
An optimist or oblivious?
You know, sometimes those things are good, right? They're the same. Sometimes I say schizophrenia is the key thing to be a leader. But, you know, there's still things that keep us up at night. So what's the number one thing that keeps you up at night? And then I'm going to add a new twist to the question is, what's the thing you're most excited about in our industry? So, Greg, I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, every night I think we go to bed worrying about what event is going to occur relative, at least if I was that evening,
Right.
It would be what cyber event or what, something we can't control, or at least we're doing the best to avoid it, but it's in some ways, it is the unknown. That scares me a lot. What excites me the most is what the EI and Lynn and what you've led the past 12 months, Pat, is this continued transformation of the industry and where we're going. I think the future's great, and that would be that opportunity to create the right value proposition for our customers is incredibly exciting.
Thank you. Lynn?
You know, Pat, I would say, are we moving fast enough? Would be something I think about from time to time. And there's always the short term and the long term, but in an industry that's transforming, we're trying to make great short-term decisions, but also lay the groundwork for the future. And so there's some wrestling at times on whether we're moving fast enough. I think Greg's comments about what you're excited about is that you work in an industry that matters, that'll have a great impact for many decades to come, with an opportunity for us to create careers for young people and in an industry that matters, and to delight the customers. I think that's what we're all striving to do.
Chris?
There's, you know, it's hard to pick one thing.
You can have more than one if you want.
Yeah,
I don't think
it's
you're
really,
a rule follower.
It's
so
a
you're
very,
okay.
it's a very complex business that we run with many people depending on us day in and day out. The world has become much more dangerous. Do we have the resiliency to operate the system? You know, I think about some of the areas that we serve. West side of Chicago, we lose the power there for some reason for a couple days. What happens with civil unrest, and what are we accountable for? How do we drill and get ready to bring systems back in case something happens? How do we better protect them? And it's the thing, you go to sleep saying, I just hope I don't get the call at 2 o'clock in the morning. But you know, there's so much work going on to drive that resiliency. And again, I'll come back to what the administration's doing. It's what's needed to be done for a very long time, and we're glad we have a partner there. The thing that gives me the most joy and proud of is seeing the impact on our underserved communities, and knowing that we can change lives if we can engage people, bring them into the company, or help facilitate other companies as a community, the business community, on helping the underserved communities. Our cities, in most cases, are financially strapped. They don't have the resources to help those that should. We talk about a low unemployment rate of 3-some-odd%. You go into some of our communities where African American males below 25 years old are in the 30 to 40% unemployed, and higher in some areas. So we have to be part of that, and it feels good when you start to see traction.
So I guess I'd agree with the former comments, but you know, obviously reliability, resiliency, the emerging risk of cyber, how do we serve the customers? Those are all things that I worry about. You know, communications during a crisis, you know, those moment of truth events, are you ready? But I also take some comfort in the fact that our organization is very focused on it. So what I worry about is the public policy dimension that impacts all of our operations. I mean, we can be helped or hurt by public policy decisions, and you know, shaping those regulatory compacts, shaping legislation, you know, just the whole thing that we revolve around, that's something I spend a lot of time thinking about, because you can semi-control that. And obviously we want to control it for the good. And what excites me is about what this industry has been and will be, and the way we serve our communities, to Chris's point. But it's also what really excites me is to see how the ability to influence a great workforce. And you know, that's really the honor of being a CEO, is that you can make such a difference in how the workforce thinks and what they engage in, and to see people rally around an initiative is it's really rewarding.
It sounds like you're an optimist, Ben. So a special thank you to our panel. Greg, thank you for joining us. Lynn, congratulations. I am so thrilled. Chris, congratulations. Ben, congratulations. Please join me in thanking our panel.
Thank you.